Spiker box. The spiker box is used to detect spikes in living neurons in invertebrates. Today we will show you how to easily assemble a spiker box. You will need a soldering iron, solder, scissors, a magnifying glass, a 9-volt battery, silly putty, wire strippers, wire clippers, and electrical tape. These are the materials that should come with your kit. There are 8 receptors, 7 resistors, 1 PCB board, 2 cork stickers, 1 logo decal, 2 needles, a speaker connector, speaker wire, an RCA connector and plug, a switch, LED, battery connectors, nuts and enclosures, screws, and a headphone connector. Before you begin, you need to know how to solder. First, turn on the soldering iron and use it with caution. When hot, touch the solder to the PCB board in the area you wish to solder to heat it up. Next, hold the solder in one hand and the iron in the other, and gently touch the solder in the iron to the PCB board. When the hole is filled, stop and wait for it to cool. Wipe off excess solder from the iron onto a wet sponge. The first step is to install the audio line out and solder the back legs to the PCB board. The finishing product should look like this. Next, begin looking for the switch and LED bulb. The LED bulb should be placed right above the R5 and the switch is to the right of the LED bulb. They should be pointing up. Solder them onto the board. They should look like this. Install the RCA input connector to the left of the LED bulb. You may need to push hard. Make sure the center wire is in the center hole, then solder it into the PCB board. This is what it should look like. Next, classify all resistors based on their color code on their stripes. It may be easier to align them with the picture as shown. Insert the resistors into their labeled position on the PCB board. Then, solder and trim the resistors. Do the same thing for all 7 resistors. Identify the capacitors based on their 3-digit code. You will find the code on each cap. You may need to use a magnifying glass to classify the capacitors. Install all 8 capacitors. Put them in their labeled area on the PCB board found on the cap. It does not matter which way they go. Solder them onto the board. The 220 UF cap needs to have the stripe facing the row of connectors. Unlike the capacitors, the 220 UF cap has polarity. Then solder the cap. Install chip holders to the PCB board. Make sure the half circles are pointing toward the front of the board. Next, begin to install the battery connectors that look like this. After soldering them onto the board, align the 9-volt battery with the positive and negative on the board. This is what it should look like. Solder on the speaker connector. It should go right above the 220 UF cap. Next, install the chips in the holders, which look like this, with all the circles on the chips pointing towards the top of the board. The AD623 goes in the left holder, the TLC2272 goes in the middle holder, and the LM386 goes on the right holder. This should be what the board looks like after part 1 is completed.
Now we'll teach you how to build the speaker assembly and the electrode. First, split 1 inch from the speaker wire, then strip in 1/2 inch of the wire.
Next, place the wire through the inside of the eyelets on the RCA connector. Solder, then crimp the ends. Make sure the wires are not touching each other to make the connection strong. Re-screw the RCA connector so it's in place. Now, looking at the other end of the wire, wrap the wire around the needle and solder.
Cut off 2 inches from the speaker wires, then strip the ends of the wires about 1/2 inch.
Next, pick up your solder.
Solder the wires to the speaker connector. It does not matter which wire goes where. Then, gently twist the 2 wires together.
Finally, wrap the solder joints away from each other using electrical tape. Make sure they don't touch. This is what you should have after part 2 is completed. Now we're going to complete the assembly of the spiker box. First, you need to measure the tube and cut it into 4 equal parts. The parts should each be about 1 inch long. This is what they should look like. Next, place the screws into the enclosure board. Then, turn the board over and slide the PCB board down the screws, like this.
Then place the 4 cut tubes over the screws.
After that, Press the speaker into the enclosure and attach the female end of the cord to the male end of the PCB board. It doesn't matter which way the cord is installed into the board. Place the top board onto the tubes and screw the nuts onto the top of the board. It doesn't matter which way the nuts are placed, nuts up or nuts down. Finally, peel and place the cork stickers to the right of the speaker. Place one cork on top of the other. If your kit comes with a thick cork, just place it next to the speaker. This is what the final spiker box should look like. And we're done! Was that so hard? Nope! Thanks for watching!